All right, you guys, let's talk about something every watch collector can relate to. When you're on the hunt for the piece, you slid into DMs, combed through the forums, maybe even hit up a friend of a friend, and still nothing.
And that's where Bezel comes in. It's not just another marketplace. It's where tech meets tradition. Whether you're after a Rolex sub or independent grail, Bezel has tens of thousands of authenticated listings waiting for you. And if the watch isn't listed yet, no worries. Just add the model to your wish list and Bezel hits you with real-time notifications the moment something drops.
And for those of you who don't have time to obsess over listings 24/7, Bezel's got a concierge team that can source the watch for you. They basically take all the stress out of the process so you can just enjoy the watch on your wrist.
Plus, for sellers, guarantee sales in just a few days. Thanks to the auction feature, it's a win-win, whether you're buying or selling.
So if you're ready to make your next move in this watch game, hit up Bezel, and trust me, you'll wish you'd done it sooner.
Welcome back to another episode of Wrist Check Pod Weekly. Woo! The dynamic duo is back together again.
Yes, we are.
To bring another insightful podcast episode today.
You see, I wore my Rolex hat this time.
Yes. So we are playing nice.
For all the guys who are butt hurt.
Yes. I think our last weekly definitely shook things up in the industry.
I was called an elitist.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I think that means I made it, though.
Yes. I mean, once the criticism starts to come in, then you know it's real.
I am elite.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was a great episode that we did together and, spiked a lot of interest. And now with our coming conversation tonight, I think it's going to be great. And this one is titled, How to Get a Patek.
How to get a Patek.
But before we get into the thick
I
of
hope Terry
things,
Stern is watching.
right?
Yeah.
that might be fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
But of course, before we get started, we have to start with the honorary wrist check.
Such is tradition.
Such is tradition, right? We're switching up a bit. I am leading this episode, but can't break tradition. I got to start with the wrist check.
Hit us off.
So we're in a very special timepiece, as they all are. This one has been getting a lot of wrist time for the past couple days. I'm wearing the trusty Omega Speedmaster.
Respect.
This one has a bit of extra sauce with the Force in the bracelet. I have to give a shout out to you because I was definitely inspired to put this on.
It's a great choice.
And I mean, has all of the nods that you wanted to have, right? I always say the best commercially available watch you can buy. Price point is there, provenance, star power, the whole nine.
You can't go wrong with the Speedmaster.
No, you can't go wrong with
it's just a great watch all around.
It's an amazing piece, and I went with the Hesalite Crystal, NASA flight, certified. Have to go with the original, the OG. So, I mean, what more is there to be said?
Not much, man. I love it. If for anyone who would ever be interested in, the conversation about having a one watch collection, Omega Speedmaster is easily would be respected as a one watch collection. If you just want a one watch, Omega Speedmaster is not a bad choice.
No.
I mean, you could say it's contending for the number one spot. I mean, it's a solid piece.
Yes,
yeah.
I definitely have to say so.
For sure.
So, what are you rocking?
I'm wearing an oldie but goodie. I was inspired by the last episode that we did that ruffled a bunch of feathers and got some folks kind of all knotted up in a bunch. So I decided to go super Rolex today. I got my hat.
Yeah.
I got my vintage GMT Master Pepsi.
Yes.
And that's just how I'm feeling. I haven't worn this in a bit. As a matter of fact, we were talking over the weekend. I was actually considering selling it.
Yes.
And I decided not to for several reasons. But one of the main reasons, I bought this watch full kit, box, papers, and I pulled out the papers and took a look at it. And as it turns out, This watch was sold literally 1 month before I was born.
Wow.
So this is as close to a birth watch as I think I could probably get. And so I decided that's pretty awesome. I never realized that. And so I decided to keep it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense as to why you should keep it. We always talk about Rolex, especially vintage Rolex, and how it has a lot of soul.
For sure.
And you can always find an emotional connection with those type of pieces.
Absolutely.
That you don't really find in modern Rolex. And I have to say, for this piece to still be in your collection speaks volumes, because you have had the most coveted Rolexes in your collection.
I've had a few. Never a Daytona.
Yes.
Never a Daytona.
But I've
had a few.
Lefty,
had a few GMTs.
Pepsi, modern Pepsi.
Modern Pepsi. Lefty, GMT. Couple of Datejust. OP.
Green one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a few Rolexes passed through my fingers.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love vintage. I think it's just more romantic. It's warmer.
Yeah.
Nothing against modern Rolex. Rolex makes great watches today. I don't think anyone can or would, in their right mind, take that away from them.
Yeah.
They're incredibly robust. If you want a watch that works and that will continue to work and that will last probably until the end of your time,
yes,
Rolex is a great watch to have. And I think what's a bigger testament just to that statement is the fact that you have a lot of these vintage pieces still around. And, many of them are in fair to excellent condition sometimes, depending on what you can get your hands on. And so just in terms of a testament to tradition and quality, I think that's huge. And I love vintage Rolex. It just has character. And this one has some patinaed looms.
Yeah.
They're kind of like a little yellowy, which is kind of nice, but it's like real even, real clean, gloss dial.
Yeah.
Which I love. Me personally, I know many people are after the matte dial, but it works for me. I love it. And my favorite complication is a dual time.
Yeah.
GMT. It's a manual version of that in some respects, but it works.
Yes,
I love it.
I have to agree.
All right, let's be real. Buying watches can be a little stressful. You're navigating through a sea of listings, wondering if that mint condition piece is really mint, hoping you're not about to drop some serious cash on something sketchy.
Into Bezel. These guys built a platform where every watch goes through an authentication process. We're talking old school watchmakers who know their stuff, checking every detail. They even smell the papers. And no, I'm not kidding.
And here's the kicker. Bezel isn't just for seasoned collectors. Whether you're spending $1,000 or $100,000, they've got a high-touch concierge service that will guide you through the entire process. You get a real human interaction, not some chatbot giving you the runaround.
And if you're selling, their auction platform guarantees a sale in days, not months. So whether you're adding or offloading, Bezel makes sure it's smooth sailing.
So next time you're eyeing that dream piece or looking to make room for a new one, check out Bezel. They've taken the hassle out of collecting so you can just enjoy the journey.
We'll get into the meat and the potatoes of things.
The meat and the potatoes. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. We wanted to kind of kick off the conversation with how to get a Patek and what Patek, looks at as their ideal collector. If you could share with your background, right? Which people are well informed about now.
They should be now. They think I'm basically a criminal.
Yes.
That's some of the feedback that I've gotten, but I'll wear that. The ideal Patek collector. It's a great question. I think it's important for people to remember that Patek is a family-owned business.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about any family-owned business, it's like, let's say hypothetically, you ran a pastry shop, right? And people love your donuts. Go crazy for your donuts.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't run the business solely on donuts.
No.
The margins aren't there, right? You've got an entire staff to pay. You want to be able to crank out as many donuts as you can. You might have to diversify your offering to your clients. And so you might begin to make other pastries. You might begin to offer other services, making cakes, things like that. So Your business's ability to grow, scale, and even sustain itself relies on your ability to have a diverse offering in terms of product. And so because it's a family business, and they have to be very careful about how they spend their money, even though they make a lot of money, right? It's still very intensive in terms of how you allocate your resources, especially in the watch business.
Yes.
It's very complicated. And so when you think about that, I think it's pretty obvious that Patek is incentivized to grow a collector base that's interested in more than just a handful of models, right? They want to cultivate collectors that have an understanding and appreciation of the heritage and the history of this brand. They want to cultivate clients that want to continue to grow with this brand. In addition to clients who are interested in their watches or their collection having a life that goes beyond them, whether they're inherited by their children or a close friend or relative. And so the ideal client has an appreciation for the variety that exists in their product line because they understand the heritage, they understand the time that has taken this company to innovate and to put back into their personal technology.
Yeah.
And so I think when most people, because let's be honest, like the watch collecting base has grown exponentially in the last just couple of years. And so as people have become acquainted with Patek, it's really two models that they're talking about, they're interested in, right? It's the Nautilus and it's the Aquanaut.
Yes.
Both great watches. But from Patek's perspective, they recognize that these are two fantastic sports models, but we aren't a sports watch company.
Yes.
Right? We have a lot more to offer our clientele than just two watches. And so for them, it's really important that the client base is educated on what it is that they're looking at, what it is that they might be considering purchasing and buying and wearing on their wrist.
So then to sum that up, how does someone align themselves with the brand to kind of be held at that regard?
That's an interesting question. I think there's a couple of different answers. So obviously it starts with your retailer. Patek doesn't really have any doors that they operate their own. I think globally they only have 3. They have one in France, one in Geneva, and then there's another one in London.
Yeah.
And so those are called the salons. Those are owned and operated by them. They're not in the retail business. I think Terry Stearns made that very clear.
Yes.
They do have those standalone shops for reasons I'm not completely certain. But internally, I'm sure that there's some historical reasons why.
Yes.
But it starts with the retailer. And you have some retail spaces that have, Patek shop-in-shops, though I think that's kind of fading out. And they're more interested in having their standalone doors that they partner with retailers on. And so it starts at the retail level. And Patek has, unlike Rolex, Patek has more rules in terms of how to engage clients and sell their product. But during my tenure dealing with Patek in the retail space, I actually found their rules not only to be fair, but I felt like they actually did enhance the selling experience. Because, and I think it goes back to them being a family-owned business, you were encouraged to really educate the client. Now, Rolex definitely encourages you to educate the client, but Rolex has a lot of restrictions in terms of the vocabulary that you use, whereas Patek has guidelines in terms of how to navigate clients through the selling experience. They don't get too wrapped up on the vocabulary. Vocabulary is important, but you have a little more free range in terms of how you speak to and deal with the client. There's definitely a culture that is, exists within the company that's extended to retailers. And it's just one of service.
Yes.
It's one of luxury.
Yes.
Right. And it just makes for a better experience. So in terms of aligning yourselves, go to your retailers, and really the job of a sales professional or a manager in Patek is to educate you.
Yes.
If you have questions, and you should go with questions, they'll have answers.
Yes.
You can talk to them about the process and what it's like to get into Patek, what that looks like. You can talk to them about the diverse offering that they have. You can talk to them about the Nautilus and the Aquanaut. They're not going to tell you like, you don't have a shot in hell of getting this watch. There's a level of decorum that has to be had when you're selling a Patek.
Yes.
And I feel like the culture of the company kind of breeds that attitude amongst the client base. And even those who aren't Patek clients yet, gives them something to aspire to. So it's almost like an unspoken, agreed upon decorum, where both people have to come as gentlemen or women to the table, and we can sit down and we can talk watches.
Yes. Yes. So I'm glad that you kind of put that into perspective, because I think another question that kind of follows up, right, is sure, it's based on your retailer, but we do know Patek to have limited retailers, limited jewelers that occupy their product. I think allocation sometimes becomes a concern for people. Are they choosing the right retailer? Are they making the right decision with shopping at a specific boutique? How are they able to understand that if they're going to make this steep investment, because Patek watches are not cheap, how do they make the right decisions on where to shop?
It's a great question. It's a hard question. I would encourage any collector who wants to get into Patek to meet other and engage with other Patek collectors. Obviously, no brand can have complete control over the retail experience. Though Patek has a great deal of control, again, going back to the guidelines and everything, you got to remember, like, every Patek is registered to a person. It's not just a serial number. The serial number is on the certificate. That certificate has the person who purchased it as their name on it.
Yes.
So they know who's buying their watches. They keep a record of every single transaction. But I would encourage them to, engage other Patek collectors, because Patek collectors are going to kind of let you know what the deal is. People that collect Patek typically collect it for years. It's like a real thing. Like Rolex is probably a little more casual.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, something new came out. Like, I want to pick that up. That's cool. With Patek, it's just a different experience entirely. It's like really centered around collecting for like serious Patek clients. And so if you might be interested in just, the sports model, fine. Those guys are going to tell you what you need to do, where you need to go, who you need to speak with in order to make that happen. What I can tell you is how that actually happens in terms of an allocation process. So for someone who's interested in getting a sports model like a Nautilus and Aquanaut, I can tell you it's typically not going to be your first Patek. Not only for the obvious reasons, like what we spoke about when we talked about Rolex, which is some of the most coveted watches going to existing clientele that have relationships and spends, but Patek monitors the secondary market. They monitor each sale and transaction. And so it is very important to them that these watches go to real collectors. So if a retailer sells an individual a sports model like a Nautilus or an Aquanaut as their first Patek, it does raise some issues for concern. Patek can see on the back end. They know who's purchasing their watch because we have to register it to that client.
Yeah.
And so that could cause some issues for the retailer. So it really is kind of frowned upon
Yeah.
for a sports model to be your first. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It does. It has happened. It does happen.
Yes.
But if it does, that retailer ought to have a reason why, because they're going to have to explain it to their rep.
Yes. And so what I do enjoy about Patek is that they're very hands-on with their retailers, mainly because they have, I think, maybe about 50 to 60 doors across the globe. And they are hands-on. They are visiting retailers. They are speaking to their partners. And as watches are registered to specific collectors, there are some collectors that do inherit Patek. Right. Their motto is, you don't actually own a Patek, you give it to the next generation. Do you think that Patek actually values inheritance, previous purchases?
They do. No, for sure. Patek, well, they do. They might not know that you have it.
Yes.
But if you're going to collect Patek, along that journey, they're going to discover that you have it.
Yes.
Because as you try to go after more watches, the retailer is going to tell them about you as a client. And when I was doing it, I always found more success in servicing the client with Patek's help by being more detailed. And so depending what that client was after, I would let them know like what they own. And I would say, hey, send me pictures, or if you know the references of the watches that you have, modern, pre-owned, vintage, let me know, because I would love to let them know.
Yes.
And what Patek looks for is really a diverse collection. So if you're going for application pieces, it's advantageous to have some diversity in your collection.
Yeah.
So, even if you're not going for it, let's say I've got a client who has 2 Nautiluses and an Aquanaut, which is not impossible. Like, could have bought them all secondary, could have found 2 retailers that, they purchased those from. Maybe they purchased it before the hype when you could go in and just pick one up.
Yes.
Right? That was a thing. But let's say that person is like, hey, there's a new Nautilus out. And now it's like, Patek is hip to secondary market. And then they discover that this person owns only sports models. There's going to be some questions. There's going to be like, all right, well, who is this guy? What are they into? Do they like anything else?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? How are we cultivating this collector? Because again, it goes back to the nature of like really building a relationship that's founded on education. And if the client is only collecting one type of line, then as a retailer, I think in my experience, they really look at you as like not really doing your job.
Yes. Yes. So with you saying that, what I do enjoy with Patek versus most of the other coveted brands, right? There's a bit of diversity. It's very streamlined. It's clear, concise. Even when you go to the website, you have collection, and it's like Calatrava, Nautilus, Aquanaut, 24, Grand Complication, and then whatever else falls in between there. And if you notice across all of those product lines, there are very few SKUs as to, let's say, Rolex. Rolex is probably making as many Daytonas as Patek is making across their entire catalog.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I think the $1 million question for everyone is, how do I get a Nautilus? How do I get an Aquanaut? Right? It is in very, very, very small quantities. So what's your answer to that?
Either you hop around from retailer to retailer and get lucky and find someone who will sell you one as your first watch, which is virtually impossible. Or you build a relationship. And so building a relationship, I know everyone's got their opinions about, oh, you gotta make me buy stuff I don't want to get something I want. The idea is hopefully we educate you enough that you actually see the value in it. I had a guy once, I remember, who came and sat down. He felt like he wasn't getting serviced properly by one of our other branches in our network, and made a point to like come and see me. And we sat down, we had a great conversation. And I asked him, I was like, what do you want? And he was like, well, I'm getting married. And I was like, cool. Do you own any Pateks? He's like, no, but I know what I want for my first. I said, what do you want? He said, I want a 5968A. That is the Aquanaut chrono that comes with the black and the orange strap. And I was just like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you want to wear that to your wedding? Like, first of all, it's a sports watch. It's a chronograph on a rubber strap. Like, it's not even like, why would you even ask me to do that to you? Now I get it. It's a fantastic watch. I want one. It's a grail piece.
Yes.
But that's no place to start you in your journey with Patek. If we're trying to have a journey, and again, family-owned business, it has to be a journey.
Yes.
Right? I get the idea that I should be able to just walk into a store and buy what I want. It doesn't work like that in this business, especially not with these brands. There was a time it did, but it changed.
Yes.
And it no longer works like that.
Yes.
And to be honest, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, especially with the family-owned business.
Yes.
Right? So, I said to him, I said, listen, I hear you. It's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
We can get you that. However, I think a more reasonable place to start, especially given the context of, what you're after in terms of your experience, you want to wear a watch at your wedding. I think the best place to start is a Calatrava, right? This is really the flagship watch of the brand.
Yes.
In reality,
yeah.
It's not the Nautilus. It's not the Aquanaut. It is the Calatrava.
Yes.
And at that time, there was the 6119G and R, two fantastic watches. Today, we have the 6196P, fire. Platinum case, salmon dial, may or may not be someone's first Patek. I have no idea what's happening today. I wouldn't be mad if that was my first Patek. That watch is beautiful.
I agree.
But the 6119 is a fantastic watch. Hobnail bezel. Rose gold is beautiful. Personally, I like the white gold. I think it's awesome.
Yes.
Anthracite dial. The thing is fire.
Yes.
Right? That's more appropriate because as we get to know one another and as you grow in Patek, these are things that I can speak to. I can tell them about you. Oh, we sold him his first Patek, which was a 6119G for his wedding.
Yes.
Right? There's a story. Again, with story, it's important because it kind of reveals a little bit about the client and they care to know.
Yes.
Because you're going to end up with their watches.
Yes. And I think that's extremely valuable in any hobby or any piece of luxury goods that you actually go through that journey and actually are able to speak to it at the highest level from both sides, like the retailer and the client, to be able to say, hey, this was the watch that I got married in. This is my first Patek. This is the one that will go to my children.
100%. Because if you go for application pieces, and a lot of people don't realize this, these are pieces that you have to be submitted for as a client.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just a matter of calling up Patek and saying, hey, John Smith is interested in this watch. No, I literally have to write an essay.
Yes.
On you.
Yeah.
So I would run around asking my salespeople, what do you know about his family? What do you know about his line of work? How long has he been collecting watches? How many Pateks does he own? Does he own any other interesting, complicated watches from any other interesting brands? Does he like independent watch brands? Which independent watch brands does he like?
Yes.
These are things that they want to know. They want to understand who this person is.
Mm-hmm.
And they read these.
Yeah.
And they're getting submitted. I would at minimum dozens of these. It could be hundreds. It could be thousands. I have no idea.
Yes.
Right. But they're going through it and then they're saying approved or they're passing.
Yes.
right? And we've had a lot of people approved.
Yeah.
But it's because we did our due diligence
Yes.
in pairing watches with the right clients.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's, people want to talk about like resellers and all this stuff. It's a real thing. It does happen. I had it happen to me, but we weren't looking to sell watches to resellers.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Which is part of the reason why it's great to go through this process, right? Continuing on sort of what we talked about with Rolex, a person's spend history with respect to Patek, their collection, is kind of an indication whether or not this person's going to keep this watch.
Yes.
To Patek's credit, they discontinued steel Nautiluses. I think that was a good thing.
Yes.
I think it was a good thing because I think it was incredibly offensive to clients who want to get into Patek. I also think it made the temptation too large. The steel Nautilus was like under $30,000 before it was discontinued.
Yeah.
But it was trading for like 100, 150. Who wouldn't pass that up in their right mind?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You can make $120,000 on a $27,000 steel watch.
Yeah.
Flip it.
Yeah.
Almost anybody would.
Yes.
And they canceled it. They discontinued it. And I thought that was a really smart move. So a lot of people were upset because they didn't get a chance to get one. I get that frustration as well. Mm-hmm. But, as a collector who's aspiring to own some of these pieces, you couldn't be happy knowing that all of these things were hitting the secondary market right after purchase.
Yeah.
And they solved it.
Yeah.
They solved it by giving you the 5811 now for 80 grand.
Yes. So and what I enjoy about this conversation is a keyword that you put in there is independent and independence. Patek is an independent brand, although they don't operate.
Since what, 1839?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys have been independent, family owned, have basically had the autonomy.
It's past hands in terms of ownership. But
yes.
Today it is family owned.
It is family owned. But the thing is they have the autonomy to actually, say who should get and who shouldn't. And it's actually, they're in the driver's seat to be able to say, okay, maybe we can ice this person, let them build. Let's work on somebody that is well seasoned and actually well invested in the brand.
Yeah. No, it's true. And you would get directions like that. I won't obviously share any names or any details, but there were conversations that I had with representatives at Patek that was like, don't sell to that guy. Like, we know who he is.
Yeah.
Do not sell him a watch. But don't tell him that we told you not to sell him a watch.
Yeah, right.
So it was all on me.
Yes.
And I had to figure out how to skirt not selling this person a watch. But because you had people who were repeat offenders. It was like, yo, this guy flips watches when he buys them.
Yes.
Or worse, he causes just a lot of issues with retailers. He makes up stories. And that was a thing like I brought up, like, when we talked about sort of like the don't leave negative comments on Google. It's not to cover up for the retailer, but there are many cases in which people would make stuff up in order to try to get stuff. And with Rolex, it's very difficult to prove.
Yes.
With Patek, it's not, because Patek knows who's purchasing their watches. Mm-hmm. So if you have someone who's buying at multiple locations and has their names on multiple certificates from multiple stores, they're going to look at that as like, first of all, what's going on here? You need a home store.
Yes.
That's a big thing for them. You shouldn't be buying our watches from multiple retailers.
No.
That's a red flag.
Yes.
Right? You have a home store. Who's your home store? Shop with them.
Yes.
If they're not servicing you, you can reach out to us and let us know. We will correct it.
Yes.
And they will.
Absolutely.
I've gotten calls from Patek about clients like, you need to fix this. This person had this experience or that experience. This is what you're going to do to make it right. And they'll guide you through it. They're very hands-on.
I love that.
It wasn't always the best call to get, but I respected it and I appreciated it because they were deeply involved with their clients, and they would call and they know these people by name.
Yes.
Because it's registered in their system.
So then for someone getting into the game, what collection do you think holds the highest regard, or the one that can be someone's like entry to Patek?
The entry into Patek?
Yes.
I mean, I would say, I think everyone should start with Calatravas.
Yeah.
And the Calatrava is just what it stands for. Like the Calatrava cross is their symbol.
Yes.
Right. So that's important. And it's just an important watch. And it has the spirit of Patek in it. Now, Patek today offers a variety of different Calatravas, which I think is really cool. They have some stuff that's a little more forward. You talk about the
6007?
Yeah, the 6007. Especially the 6007 Gs,
Yes.
that trio, the yellow, red, and blue, fire. Like, to me, for someone who's like under 40 years old, if you're looking to get into Patek, that's a perfect first Patek Philippe watch.
Yes.
The 6007 is an awesome piece. You can wear it every day. It's white gold, feels like luxury, but it's super sporty.
Yeah.
And it's a great timepiece.
Yeah.
You've got the 5212, the weekly calendar, if you're into complications. Incredible Calatrava.
Yes.
And then again, you got the time only pieces. You know, you still have the 6119s.
Yeah.
You have the brand new one, the 6196.
5226, I believe. Yeah, 5226, 50.
We know someone who actually just picked that up today, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Shout out to our friend. Maybe I shouldn't say his name, but he just picked it up. And congratulations to him.
Yes.
Fantastic watch.
Yes.
You know, and then I think there's also like, you know, the Gondolo.
Yeah.
The ladies 24 is a great place to start.
And they're actually made the 24 bigger too. So like it can be.
I think so. I mean, personally, that's always kind of been a critique of mine. I think Patek can kind of do away with saying like ladies watches.
Yeah.
They are very traditional. So there are some pieces that do very much kind of like feel like a woman's watch in the sense of like what you think of when you hear the word woman's watch. But like the 24, I think, is moving into a space where it could very easily be unisex.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, occasionally there are grand complications that are immediately available.
So I'm glad that you touched on that, because my next question was going to be, we do hear of those horror stories of people coming into a Patek shop or a Patek salon, and they say, hey, you know, I'm interested. I want to get into it. And sometimes there is a bit of that like pushback, and it's super pretentious. And someone goes in and says, oh, if you want a Patek, oh, I have this grand complication here. It's actually $90,000.
Yeah, that's messed up.
And you're like, yo, dude, like, what's going on here? I mean, I don't want to answer this question for you, but and I want to get your take on it. It's like, if someone's entry to Patek because they are independent, they can offer these things, and like what is readily available is six-figure watches. Like, I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that at least the Patek game is not a game for the boys.
No,
it's a big boys game.
It's a big boys, big woman's game.
Big woman's game.
It's not a joke.
It's not for the weak.
But I think in all fairness, you know, you shouldn't be forced to start with a grand complication. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Yes.
I personally believe that all grand complications should be application pieces. Because how is your first entry into Patek going to be a perpetual calendar chronograph?
Yes.
That's a lot of watch.
Yes.
For someone who's just starting off in Patek. Now, if you happen to be a very seasoned watch collector and maybe you own a bunch of complicated watches, you have some perpetual calendars, you have some chronographs, and what was the one with the 5270?
5270.
That was always the one that was kind of like in the case, right?
Yeah.
Or like you could get it. It wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
A fantastic
Yeah,
watch.
5270.
There's different variations.
Yeah, because there's R, I think there was a G at one point.
There's G, P.
P is application, right?
Yeah. But it's a soft application.
Yes.
It means you apply for it, you'll get it.
Yes.
But that watch is $270,000. Like, it's no joke.
No joke.
It's over $250,000.
Yes.
So I don't think it's fair to have a client start there. But if a client wants to start there and you have complications, it will definitely fast track you.
Big time.
Someone buys a 5270 out of the case. That's like, okay, who is that person?
Yes.
You want to know.
Yes, for
right?
sure.
Because it's like, that's a heavy price point.
Yes.
That watch is trading under on the secondary market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot of watch to handle.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's not the new caliber AP perpetual calendar that's easy to use through the crown. You need to open the manual and go step by step to set this thing.
Yes.
It's very serious. It's very easy to break.
Yes.
Right? If you're not operating it correctly. And so, but they're fantastic. I mean, I would love a 5270. I can't afford it.
Yes.
But, I've never bought a Patek at retail. I've always bought them like pre-owned and vintage.
Yeah.
But sure.
You have owned Grand Complications.
Yeah, I have.
Let's put that out there.
I have. Yes. But I decided I was not wealthy enough to sustain or warrant me owning it in the event that, it was broken and I needed to get a service or anything like that.
Yes.
So
probably like
to me,
5 to 10K. It's another watch.
It's 5 to 10K, and then to wait 12 months to get it back. I was just like, you know what? I don't really want that headache. I'm going to pass on it for now. But it was a great experience. I loved owning that watch. It was the 5140R perpetual calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful timepiece.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I miss it. It's a great watch.
Yeah.
And but I love Patek. I think I love AP, but I also really love Patek, and I love Patek for their complications.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're an incredible brand.
Yes.
I'm not crazy about the Cubitus, but I get it. But the beauty of having a family business is that you get to make the decisions that you want. It's your business.
Yes.
And I don't see how anyone could not respect that.
I have to agree. So speaking to seasoned collectors that have owned a few pieces, probably at this point, they might have had feelers for application, probably haven't had the conversation yet. What are you looking for when you're talking to someone that kind of is in that space to step into application?
Looking for a diverse collection, really. I'm looking for someone that doesn't have exclusively sports models, especially when you're going for the hard application pieces, like pieces that are very competitive.
Yes.
Because when you're going for these pieces, it's not just like you and you alone or you and someone else that's, a client in your store. It's like you regionally.
You against the world.
Maybe sometimes, but it's like, I think if you're in New York, you up and down the East Coast.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a ton of collectors from, Canada all the way to Florida.
Yes.
Right? So how do you stand out? And so we would always, like, when we found out that app pieces were coming up, we would try to find the right client. And so it would be kind of a situation of us like, first, let's kind of go through all the people we sold Pateks to this year. Let's see if anyone's registered for any of those pieces, like if there was any interest. And then let's have some conversations with some collectors. And you were selling, you know what I'm saying? You might hit someone up and say, hey, you got this piece and that piece and this piece. I've been informed that this piece is coming up and it's available. I would love to put you forward for it. Are you interested?
Yes.
They said, no, you pass. And if they said, yeah, it's like, okay, well, now we've got to put together a
bio.
sort of a bio and a profile on you to submit you for this watch.
Yeah.
So I need to explain a little bit about who you are, what you do, the watches that you own. They should be very diverse. You can have multiple sports models, but the more sports models you have other stuff too.
Yes.
How long you've been a client, and ultimately why you want this watch.
Yeah.
And I've got to do a good job at explaining all of that to Patek.
Yes.
In written form.
Yes.
And then submit it. And if they take any interest in you, they'd call me and ask you maybe a couple more questions. And then at some point, I would get yay or nay.
Yes.
And if yay, they would tell me when the watch was going to arrive. And the funny thing about certificates is that once they're approved, they arrive with the client's name on the certificate. So it's your watch.
Yes.
Now, if you don't buy it, if you have cold feet, I've got to send it back with the certificate.
Yeah.
And they'll issue a new certificate and send it somewhere else. Now, we weren't explicitly told this, but I always kind of felt like if you reneged on an application piece, it was going to be a while before you would be considered again.
Yeah.
And for multiple reasons. Now, things happen. No one's going to hold it against you.
Yes.
They shouldn't.
No.
But your retailer might be a little more hesitant to put you up again because Patek is going to look at them like you didn't do your due diligence.
Yes.
Why did you put someone forward who wasn't ready?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you got to have a reason.
Yeah. What I do enjoy about Patek as well, and we mentioned it on the Rolex conversation, when it comes to Patek, it does take a certain skill set to sell it.
Sure.
And, Patek is not really treated as a brand that it sells itself, right? You do have to have skilled sales professionals that actually can properly articulate to the brand, properly articulate to the client to be able to manage those expectations. So although we are having this conversation, we still will have those in the comments that go, man, I only want a sports model.
That's fine.
which is
buy
okay.
it on the secondary market.
So I want to ask, for someone that was at that level, right, to be someone that managed the expectations of your staff as well as the client, what kind of conversations are you having for someone to see the light that still goes, I hear you, Perri, but I want that Aquanaut?
I know, honestly, sometimes there's nothing you could say to them. You just had to kind of leave everything as it is. I mean, we had people who were like very gung-ho about like, that's what I want. That's all that I want. Now, again, Patek makes maybe 50,000 watches a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Rolex. I'm not seeing a lot of Aquanauts. I'm not seeing a lot of Nautiluses.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like every time you got a Nautilus and it was like, oh, we got, because you don't see them like that.
Yes.
And so I could tell you, listen, we'll try to deliver one to you, but I really do have a whole bunch of people ahead of you.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And to be honest, those pieces are typically allocated at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
The beginning of the fiscal year, at least. Because we would get an entire list of all the watches that we would get. And we would leave some that we wouldn't allocate, but it's not a whole lot to play with.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about pick any sports model. You're lucky if you get 2 of them each year.
Wow.
Some of them you get 1. Some of them you don't see.
Yes.
And that's just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
But if your retailer is also doing a really great job, sometimes Patek would treat you nicely. And they'd be like, here's a little extra something.
Wow.
Here's a little, and you get extras.
Wow.
And that was only really if you're doing a good job. They'd reward you.
Yes.
We got something for you.
Yes.
I don't know what the criteria was for them doing that.
Yes.
They're very secretive. They're like, the CIA.
Yes.
They hold everything close.
Mm-hmm.
But they were fair. And I think in terms of just client and customer engagement, they, again, going back to my original point, it's a brand that puts a lot of emphasis on education.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had a learning portal that you had to really keep up with. And not only would they test you on references and models, but complications and movements.
Yes.
And very serious stuff.
Yeah. There's also a tier system in terms of who sells what, right? There's level 2 to 4, and I believe there's now a continuing
with certain
education.
training, you couldn't. So at certain levels, there were certain watches that you could sell.
Yeah.
And so hypothetically, if salesperson A had a client that wanted a particular kind of watch, but that salesperson wasn't
certified.
They weren't certified to sell that watch. They would have to be paired with someone who was.
Yeah.
To walk them and the client through that process.
Wow.
And that's just to give you an idea of like how serious it is. Like it's a lot of emphasis on education.
Yeah.
The salesperson has to know their stuff because they have to be able to share that with the client.
Yeah. And to that point, right? Because Patek sees everything, if you have salesperson A who's not certified and they sell that watch,
Patek you ain't get a phone call.
Yes, for sure. You will get a phone call.
They're like the all-seeing eye.
Yes. So we tapped on a bit of it in terms of like the secondary market, right? And some of the returns that people got for, steel models. I want to ask, because Patek is such a great brand with so much breadth of history, why are we seeing Patek watches that aren't Aquanaut, that aren't Nautilus, that aren't a Cubitus, right? Why are those trading, sometimes 30, 40% below MSRP on the secondary market?
Because people aren't educated. They don't know what they're looking at. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like being honest, watches traditionally always traded below retail.
Yes.
On the secondary market.
Yes.
Like it was very rare for watches. It happened, but it was rare for watches to be worth exponentially more money once they were pre-owned. Like the whole idea of like pre-owned is like it should be cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And then like COVID happens and it's like, no, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
But people just don't know what they're looking at. They want them. I mean, I used to really it was like knocking my head against a concrete wall, like really trying to tell people and educate them like how wonderful this brand was and that these watches that are sitting in the case are really incredible. I get you on a Nautilus or an Aquanaut, that's fantastic. But compared to this stuff, there's like so many better pieces that they do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just in terms of like build and quality and complication, like why don't you want this stuff? But ultimately, like people want the flash.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most interesting thing, right? Because like there was a time when you could walk into retail and get a Nautilus, and then you couldn't. So like, what does that say? That says that like a lot of you only want it because of what everyone else thinks about it now.
Yes.
You don't really want it because you didn't want it then.
Yeah.
But you want it now. And then it was trading below on the secondary.
Yeah.
You could get a Nautilus.
Yeah.
Vintage, modern, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it was attainable, but nobody wanted it. And then, it's funny. We had, I remember talking to someone about this and it was sort of like, why was the Nautilus the one? I think the Nautilus rose in popularity because it was the most affordable Patek. So it ended up being the watch that you saw all over social media.
Wow.
Because people could get it for $25,000.
Wow.
And that was it.
That's interesting.
That was it.
Wow.
It was the watch that you saw most on social media because people could afford it.
Wow.
And now everyone's like, I want that.
So as we kind of reach the tail end of our conversation, I think we've tapped on it a bit throughout the questions that have been asked, but what do you see that Patek offers to their clients, to their partners, I guess to the overall community that other watch brands just don't offer?
I mean, they offer, I mean, they offer intimate relationship. Like if you're the kind of watch collector that cares about that kind of thing. Some people don't. Some people just want the watch. But if you want a relationship with the brand, Patek is one where you can kind of have that. They do amazing events. They just did one in Miami for the Cubitus. We know some people who went there, and I saw photos and stuff online. It looked amazing. I just think in terms of like service, they're the only watch brand that I know of that will service any watch they've ever made. Doesn't matter when it was made. So if you buy a vintage Patek pocket watch, let's say it's 100 years old and it stops working, you can send it to Patek.
Wow.
They'll fix it. Not only will they fix it, if there are components inside that need to be replaced, even if they don't have it, they'll make it to replace the component.
Wow.
They will bring that watch back to factory working standard.
Wow.
And that's their promise. Any watch that has ever been made by Patek, they will service.
Interesting.
I mean, Rolex doesn't even do that.
No. And you even see it in like Rolex's certified pre-owned program, right? They don't buy certain watches past a certain year. If it has a tritium dial, right?
Yep.
Definitely if it's, radioactive, they won't buy it.
Yeah, sure.
But, I think from everything that I've gathered, I think it's pretty pleasant to actually ingratiate yourself in the Rolex brand. In the Patek brand. And I think that, it's a bit of a graduation, when you go from like Rolex collecting to Patek collecting.
It's funny because I've purchased Rolexes at retail. I now have an AP at retail. I've owned a few different Pateks, but I've never purchased one at retail. I would love that experience. I can't wait. And I think that's part of the incentive I had to like get rid. I don't own any Patek now.
Yeah.
And I would like for my next one to be one that I got at retail. And I think I'll, probably do well. I don't really have very many ambitions of owning a Nautilus. I do like the Aquanaut. But like I could get around to it. We were hanging out when we were in Geneva with our friend Inni Archibong, who's a big watch collector.
Yes.
And he took us to Patek in Geneva. And I remember sitting in on his conversation with his salesperson. And I just thought, man, I love this. And I like the way that he collects. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't own a sports model yet.
No, he doesn't.
Doesn't want one yet.
No.
He's really, he's developed a relationship with his salesperson because it felt like they were best friends.
Yeah.
And he's relying heavily on his and him educating him. And he's showing him different watches. Like, yo, take a look at this. Take a look. I remember he showed him a chronograph. I think it was the
59? Was it? No, he owns a 5905, I believe.
Yeah, he does. He has a 5905. It was the 53, the Salmon Dial Chrono.
Yes.
The 51.
I can't remember that reference.
Anyway, Patek references. It's all over the place. But anyway, the Chrono Salmon Dial.
Yes.
World time.
Yes.
Right?
The new one, yeah.
5935.
That was new back then, yeah. I think it was 5935.
5935. Yeah,
because steel.
And he looks at it, he's like, man, this is a great watch, but I don't have any reason to use a chronograph today.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'll pass.
Yeah.
And I just thought about that and I was like, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I just love that the attitude. Obviously, not that anyone has to follow those. I mean, I own chronographs, but the fact that like he was so intentional with which Patek he was going to own because of his ability to use it in his life, that he was actually turning pieces down.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't go swimming often, so I don't want an Aquanaut. I'll get to a Nautilus when I'm ready. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
Looking at Calatravas, looking at complications, perpetual calendars, and trying to sort out what he wanted.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like a real authentic Patek experience.
That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Like we went there. He didn't buy a watch. I think he got a couple of straps.
Yeah.
But he was kind of like figuring out, all right, for my next purchase, let me see where I want to go. And he's still sorting it out. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. So my final question I have to ask, and I think I know the answer from you.
Okay.
To our viewers in TV land.
Sure.
Because this conversation is totally different than the one that we had with Rolex.
I enjoy Patek much more than I do Rolex. I have the Rolex hat on, but
so I want to ask, is it more advantageous to solely collect Patek? Can you be like a one brand watchman?
me personally, I don't know. But I think Patek makes it very easy to be a one watch brand collector because of the diversity that they offer in their product line. They do almost everything you can think of. Perpetual calendars, chronographs, minute repeaters, annual calendars, weekly calendars.
Yeah. That's a complication.
Inline perpetuals.
Weekly is a complication they created too.
Facts. Travel times.
Yeah.
And then they get crazy and they start mixing some of those complications up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you get like a travel time that's a chronograph or a perpetual chronograph.
Yeah.
Or, a chronograph that's a minute repeater. Like they do like all these crazy things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just think it's awesome. So it's like, I think they have a really great design language. It's very traditional, though I do think we do have to give them some credit for kind of stepping outside of their comfort zone a little bit. I think they do a really good job at straddling, right? They don't go too far off, but they do some really interesting things.
Yeah.
Like the lefty split chrono perpetual.
Crazy.
Fire watch.
$500,000 though.
Insane. When they did that collection of like those asphalt dial Calatravas, they did the GMT annual calendar, and then they did the time only. Fantastic.
Yes.
So they definitely have moved the needle in terms of design. Nothing crazy, but definitely like forward for Patek. So, I appreciate that about them. And I think, whether you're a young collector or, you've been doing this a while, they always deliver you something that's exciting and fresh. Even if you're not in love with everything, any given Patek release, there's going to be one or two watches that you love.
Yes.
Always. And so for them, I think you can easily be a one watch brand person with Patek for sure.
No, that's awesome. It's so funny to be an interviewer interviewing another interviewer.
I know, it's crazy, right? Black Mirror.
Yes. But this is a great conversation. I actually love, the passion that you've shared about Patek, because I think, for anyone that this message gets through, I think it'll kind of strike home. I think it will land very gently for people to kind of feel.
Maybe some people might be butthurt again, but
I hope not.
I want a Nautilus.
Yes.
I want a Nautilus. Big babies.
Yes.
Shut up.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
We will have those in the comments, and we'll have, maybe some industry folk that may not be happy with this conversation, but I think, it all comes from.
I would hope they would be happy. I think I think the conversation was good. Ultimately, like we love Patek. I haven't had negative experiences with that brand. I haven't had too many negative experiences with clients who are after that brand. There's something about Patek that I think kind of pushes people to aspire to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It might just be the spirit of the brand. But it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's definitely different. And I say that and also kind of wanting to emphasize that there is a lot of diversity amongst collectors in Patek. So I don't want to give anyone the impression that maybe because of the price points solely that you're dealing with a different or a specific kind of person.
Yes.
Because we know people from many different backgrounds.
Any Nigerian
that
background.
Collect Patek. Exactly.
Al, based out of DC.
That's what I'm saying. And the people that I know collect Patek are like really amazing stand-up people. who also love Rolex.
Yes.
But there's something about Patek that pushes people to aspire to be better.
Yes.
Maybe also decent human beings.
Yeah. That is true.
I'm just saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That really is an interesting take. And it's funny, we were closing and now we're going back into it. But I think that's something that we definitely need to tap on too, because, you know, you can walk into any other showroom and someone can judge you based on how you look, how you dress, how you speak, etc., anything in between. But you take someone like Nori, for example, who, you know, says FP Bajon. Like,
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
But I mean, he owns a number of Pateks and actually was one of the first people to be allocated a Cubitus probably in the country.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And he's buying it at retail because he has a genuine,
He loves it.
he loves it. He has a
loves
genuine relationship.
Yeah.
And he says like, you know, I don't always drink coffee, but if I'm drinking coffee, it's always at Patek.
It's always a Patek.
That's a flex.
Respect.
So to close out the episode, you know, I have to say thank you for sharing your insight. I think it's always great when we're able to just get together us two and
Yeah, 100%.
and kick it and kind of answer all the questions that people are asking. So
And ask questions in the comments if
Please.
you have anything you want to know. We're here. You know, if you keep it spicy, be prepared to get some of that spice back.
yes,
We're coming in hot.
yes,
So just be ready because
Yes.
I will tell you like it is.
yes, yes, yes. So this has been another episode of WCP Weekly. Obviously, you know where to find us: YouTube, Spotify, Google Pod, Apple Pod, maybe one day in the metaverse, TikTok for the children, the gram.
Yeah.
Hit us in the DMs, holla at us in the bungalow.
Go Knicks.
Yes, go Knicks.
Hopefully they won the game by the time this ends.
Hopefully.
Deuces.
Peace.